This is Implement AI in 15 Minutes, where CIOs and tech leaders share how they're turning AI from strategy into real execution.
Welcome to Implementing AI in 15 Minutes. Today we have Mihai Faur, CIO at UiPath. Welcome, Mihai.
Thank you very much, Alex, for the nice introduction and for the opportunity to speak with you on this podcast.
Of course, yeah. Looking forward to going a little bit deeper into AI. Now, you've been with UiPath for almost 10 years, since the very beginning. Where do you sit on where the company was built with deterministic automation versus where we are today and how the shifts have changed?
So we started to use our own product internally, I think 4 years since I joined the company as CFO. That was end of 2015, beginning of 2016, but didn't have the scale of our processes, so I had to wait for the growth. I also did a lot of system implementations because automation would work better in a tech stack environment that is not automated, or where you still have many repetitive jobs done by the humans. So this automation journey started, of course, with traditional rule-based automation, deterministic ones. That was a technology that we had at that moment. Back in 2019, we started this to automate as much as possible internally, help us through the IPO process as well. And we continued this journey until like last year. Now, of course, with the rise of LLMs and the AI, we kind of, took internally an approach of looking at those processes that are still in the non-deterministic world, of course, where the humans plays an important part, and where we believe, building the agents on top of LLM and our technology would make sense. So now we are actually building on already built foundation, which we call it the automation foundation. And of course, we're not looking at agents individually, but the agents play an important role in a much larger agentic automation where you have API workflow, traditional RPA workflows, and the human in the loop. And we believe in the orchestration of all of this. And I think that the agentic automation would be, the second step after the automation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it must be challenging in a way because you've been at the forefront of automation even before people were adopting or understood how automation can integrate into a business at scale. So how do you choose your current tech stack for AI implementation in the company? What do you build yourself versus what do you go externally for, and what's hybridized?
So we did this system implementation way before, having the automation. Like you have a traditional ERP, you have a traditional CRM, you have a traditional people operations information systems like Workday, SAP for like finance, Salesforce or other for sales. So we have all of this, and with the automation, we kind of, make this system work better. And also whatever was still done by the humans outside of it and was deterministic, we built the automation. Now, for example, I'll give you the example of we replaced NetSuite, our former ERP, with SAP. And we did this project last year. And we actually choose to not build specific business logic within the SAP, and we keep this concept of clean core, allowing the SAP to be as minimum as possible customized. That meant for us that we have to take this business logic, our specific business logic as a software company, into the automation world, and we did that. And of course, there are some certain processes done by SAP in a certain way, and we had our own way of doing, for example, tax, intercompany charges, payroll, and other stuff. And we build automation on top of the SAP. So we run the SAP implementation, which means configuration, integrating the system with the other systems to work, doing minimum configuration on SAP, and putting automation on top of it. So we look at what we had to build through the lenses of automation, having an automation first mindset. Now with Agentic, of course, but before that, with the automation, put us in the driving seat. We decide what we want to do with agentic automation or automation technology, agnostic ones, versus what you want to do specific programming language for the specific applications. We still have that today, and we have a governance by which we are guided, let's say, but always is like, can we build something with an agnostic automation that we know is going to scale in other areas versus building, I don't know, a script using ABAP programming language, which is the SAP programming language. So we have this policy and governance in place.
Do you make those choices? Is there a specific criteria to make those choices? Because, for example, I just submitted a support ticket on Claude, on Anthropic, and I noticed that they weren't running, their own AI on the chat agent. It was using, I think, Intercom or something like that. Are there any decisions internally where you're thinking, okay, it's not worth building this, let's just go to somebody else that offers just this one siloed AI agent, or how do you take that on?
Well, using UiPath, right? Just talked to Daniel Dinas, and he said any good software developer will learn UiPath platform
Okay.
in a weekend. He said it in the afternoon. Let's say it in a weekend. So you don't need to know specific programming language in order to be a good developer. We also believe in the scalability of any, if using an agentic automation or automation technology, such as UiPath One, there are others as well. Kind of leaving the core of applications, untouched. That would be easy, for example, for doing testing in case of migrating to new versions. All the applications have versioning, and you'd have to maybe run again the testing. You don't rely too much on someone else's resources. I mean, you are you are taking much of the knowledge inside of the house, so there are some advantages. Plus, I think the maintenance of an agentic automation team or automation team, it's not that expensive comparing to specific resources. Plus, you don't find the resources and so many other aspects.
So it's safer to just use what you know that you've built and works.
Yeah, yeah.
What specific workflows have you replaced or augmented with AI in the last, let's say, 3 to 6 months that really changed productivity metrics?
It's difficult to talk about productivity at this moment, and we are still trying to deliver as much as possible agentic automation. And of course, we have the lenses of productivity and ROI, but we don't put that in front. I mean, we don't put that as a definitive rule when we build something. I'll just give you the example of we have in IT a workflow where there's an application that sits on all the devices. That application is called thread locker, and a thread locker is basically kind of blocking blacklisted applications, so people cannot, for example, use games or certain VPNs or certain applications. Thread locker will block it. But there is a manual process where the human will go and have to, block it in thread locker, that application, when a message from the thread locker was received. So there's a human work involving, human touch on managing the thread locker applications on the devices when blocking or unblocking. So not approving or approving applications to be installed on the devices. And this was done through the agentic automation. So we built an agent that was able to read the messages received from certain devices to accept or not to accept an application to be installed. The agent would look in a database of whitelisted applications and will block it or unblock that thing. And with this, we basically save whatever contractors' work we had to do all of this work. This is a very simple agent. We built, for example, another one. So that saved us like $75,000 on a yearly basis, which you can quantify the value of the ROI. We had another one where it was an elevation of the pre-existing automation built on deterministic rules, calculating, for example, a provision for customers that will not be collected. So like invoices issued to customers. There's the risk, of course, not to collect all the money from the customers. So this deterministic was creating a certain provision. So like expensing basically those account receivable because it will not be collected. But there are certain flavors to that where the human would go and understand, even if you have a customer that is not due, but the customer goes bankrupt, of course, even if the invoice is not due from a customer that was announced to be bankrupt, you will have to consider it that you have 100% chances not to collect it.
Exactly.
And that was the human going and understanding, different statuses with the customer at a certain moment, pulling out that specific invoice from the customer and adding it to the already built provision that was done by the automation. So we took this deterministic automation and we put an agent on top of it to read flags, information from different data sources about our customers when looking at the invoices that we issue for those customers, marry those data and say like, now you have another provision that you have to create for this specific customer. So
Many edge cases.
edge cases. So yeah, that's true, edge cases. So we have a scenarios of different edge cases for this. Of course, that worked very well with Agentic because it was able to kind of do what human would do if you have a clear set of rules like a standard operating procedures, and you have also the data regarding your customers. So marrying this with the LLM, we recreate the automation, and that was an agentic automation. So we recreate the workflow. There's the power of the agent, and we save in this half of FTE on a yearly basis, so like 1,000 hours per year. We reduce the workload.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. How do you sort of see the gap between the possibility of what you build and what can be built with your infrastructure versus what the consumer tends to use most often? Is it the same usually, or are there cases that they're gravitating towards that are maybe not exploring the breadth or the depth of what's possible?
Everyone is using AI these days, and we even have an enterprise agreement with OpenAI where we use ChatGPT. And if you look at the way you use the AI, it's mostly in the personal productivity world. So obviously, there is a big impact on the personal productivity of the consumers. Yeah, even if those consumers would be employees of our company. Yeah. And I look at the use cases I have in front of me. It's research and information gathering. It's brainstorming and ideation. It's, of course, drafting and editing documents, analyzing data, learning and training. These would be top use cases for the use of AI. I call all of these personal productivity ones.
Yeah.
When we talk about an enterprise-grade AI use cases, we talk about things that combine the human reasoning that you put it in the agents, but you also combine deterministic rules and you also combine the humans. We at this moment are not allowing agents to go and write into our systems. We still have the humans in the loop to validate certain responses from the agents, and we're also using our workflows. That's integrating systems. That's agent triggering an automation to extract data, also agents that will give the data to the humans to validate, and then once validated, automation will write data into the systems. So we are talking about personal productivity versus a process orchestration versus enterprise orchestration. And in the process orchestration, of course, we have this personal productivity together with API workflows, together with the human in the loop. That's the difference, as much more than just personal productivity for us.
Yeah.
Internally, we really have to build the workflows, and then we have to decide, well, in this part of the workflow, we're going to use non-deterministic. That means an LLM, the system prompt, and then we have to trigger an automation. We have the human to validate, or maybe we don't have the human to validate. It depends from use case to use case, but it's that's the next level. So I would separate between the personal productivity and the enterprise productivity, because it's complex to build enterprise-grade agentic automation. It's not that straightforward.
Yeah, and I guess even for enterprises, sometimes the gateway or the adoption step could be
Yes,
personal productivity of the team. Okay, that makes
it
sense.
starts. It starts from
What?
there, of course. I mean, it starts to people
Yeah,
will think, well, if I'm doing this part, but I know that I have to take the output out of it and write it in a system. What do I do? Okay. So first, I will let the agent running from a personal productivity give me the answer. I look at the answer. I said, yeah, I kind of agree with it. Let me modify it a little bit, and
yeah,
then send it to the system. So you'll put this together in an orchestration.
yeah. Essentially, what moat are you guys looking at with UiPath for 2026? Or is that even necessary? I guess for a company your size to still look at a moat with all the new tools coming out and the changes in business functions.
That's very interesting. It's evolving. It's changing. I think with the change in the versions of the models, they're becoming better and better. I guess our mode will be orchestration in general of the agents, of the workflows, the deterministic ones, of course, and of the humans. And this orchestration, gives you access to understanding better enterprise-grade processes that can be automated, but also the transactions, the volumes that are passing through this agentic automation. So to understand better, the ROI at the end of it, but also allowing in this process orchestration for having the right guardrails, the right security, the right, controls over this. Yeah. So orchestration and security for us and governance for us, it's really, really, I think the mode. Agentic is becoming more and more a commodity. So everyone is people are building companies on just vertical agents.
Right.
Um, so it, there's a competition from all the places. Companies are building their own teams to build agentic automation by combining different technologies plus open source technologies. But for us, we are agnostic. We look at the orchestration between all of these, AI and non-AI components. But even the RPA has an AI component,
Right.
because it's not entirely true that you say like, RPA doesn't have. AI is just a way of using the technology. But for example, in the RPA, you would also include an OCR, which has some machine learning in it, or so. But we're trying to give to enterprises technology where they can orchestrate all of this.
Yeah, I think we're still in that new part of the AI generation where words are hard to define.
Mm-hmm.
People call something one thing here and the same thing something else, but it does completely different things. So I think it's going to take some time for the language to catch up.
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes.
if you were advising, let's say a mid-market sort of enterprise company, maybe between 10 and 100 million, 50 to 500 locations on AI automation strategy today, what would you tell them to prioritize versus deprioritize? Like, where would you start?
Yes, I had the same approach 5 years ago when I started our traditional automation technology. Internally, you really need to identify your processes that you want to tackle. And I'm talking about enterprise grade automation. I'm not saying personal productivity. Um, there's still a big challenge of identifying those processes where really need to be automated. Now you have the capacity of adding AI on top of it, so you can build agentic automation, not only automation. You can look at those processes that are still unstructured for human reasons. A human follows a certain procedures, but they decide what to do. So you can have agents on it. So identifying those processes is important, and then making sure, like for example, the order to cash process, the procure to pay process, a tax treasury processes, the back office processes, but look also at the front end processes as well, in customer, in call centers, in customer support centers, and you have a lot of processes that could be now really, really elevated to agentic automation. Identify those where where you spend a lot of time. Try to automate them, of course, because in the end you'll have the right ROIs, but that's technology savings or it's like improve of the work. You can scale or descale. I always say like automation is not here to provoke instant FTE saving. It's here to actually allow companies to grow. Allowing for capacity for additional capacity. Um, Identifying those processes is critical, and I think second step is you really need to understand your processes. So you have your subject matter experts, you have your people, business leaders running those processes. You really need to understand those. Once you do this, the design of the to-be processes and the automation will follow very easily. But I would say try to know as much as possible your processes, and then easy to automate and build agentic automation. But I find it with companies, I'm talking with a lot of customers, struggling to identify those processes and really having them documented because people just grow, and it's like a tree. When you allow the tree to grow the way, the tree wants to grow or the way, you have to cut it, you have to maintain, you have to trim it, So the same with the processes, you allow processes to grow inside of your company. You don't know them, you don't document them, then you don't know what you have to do. So
Yeah, it's hard to measure or build anything around it when there's
and
no.
we have the same issue. It's not like no company is actually in a situation to say, well, this is the blueprint, have it, tell me the to-be process. Ideally, most of the large companies get to that point, and then once they stabilize, they're happy with it. But there's a lot of manual work in those.
Yeah.
So whenever we go back to the blueprint and say like, oh, this blue field, what about automation? Why don't we just simplify it? So understanding processes, I think process understanding is critical. Once you do that, it's easy to do that. The technologies are not hard. You can have developers to build that easily, as I said. That would be my recommendation.
Perfect. I love it. Well, Mihai, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure having you on, and we're looking forward to see what 2026 brings for you guys.
Thanks, Alex. That was great.